So, good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you might be in the world. Welcome to ASRG. Today we have a really interesting talk. We have Bastian Kruck from itemis, and he's going to talk to us about a new ISO standard that's coming out, the 21434. So, before we get started, as always, we love having these little polls or questionnaires to start getting people interactive with our presentations. So before we start, let's go ahead and just see where everyone's coming from tonight. As always, we are using Poll EV. So if you can go to pollev.com/ASRG, and there's going to be 2 or 3 questions, so you can always um, stay in this website, and as I go to the next question, it will be released for you to see it as well. So just if you go into pollev.com/ASRG, you can answer here the first question, where are you joining us from? And just kind of click on the map or enter where you're joining us from tonight or today. Very good. And so it looks like we have California. It looks like we also have Detroit, maybe UK. Even though it's a holiday, it seems like there's a few people joining us from Germany. Mexico also, that's really nice to see. I haven't seen too many people joining from Mexico yet. But anyways, Poll EV, this is completely anonymous, so we're not taking any statistics or any type of personal data here. It's only to kind of see where people are logging in from. It's totally voluntary, so only if you want to do it, of course. Just kind of helps us understand, who is participating from where. Very cool. So it looks like Tel Aviv is also joining us. We got a bunch of people joining from Germany as well. It looks like Colombia is also there, if I have my countries correct. Mexico, Detroit, Michigan, California, Egypt, uh, another country in Africa. I'm not quite sure what that is, but welcome. Welcome to ASRG. Texas. It's really amazing. So the point of this is to understand, listen, if you're interested in automotive security, you're not the only one, right? There are thousands of people around the world that are already members of the ASRG, and probably in the same location, the same city, the same country that you're already located in. And this kind of helps us understand, okay, there are people joining from the same locations that may be good networking opportunities, and just to understand the community itself. So let's go to the next question here. Thanks for saying where you're joining from. I see India just jumped in. Looks like Romania as well there. But let's go to the next question here, because today's talk is about ISO 21434. And we just want to get an idea of how many people do know about this new standard. So basically the question is, who knows the new super ISO 21434? So the first answer is yes, of course. This is something I read all the time. I read it to my kids. You know, The second answer is yes, of course. This is the new isotope for automotive security. Everybody knows this. The third answer is no, but I've heard about it. And the last one's ISO question mark. What the hell is this thing? So I really love that we are able to see the answers come in directly, and you can kind of see who has even exposure to the ISO 21434, which is going to be the main focus of our talk today. So let's see here. The first answer is yes, of course. It looks like around 50% of the people have answered yes. We know what it is. The second question answer is yes, that is the new isotope for automotive security, around 14%. Um, the next answer is no, but I've heard about it. This is around 17%. And then ISO question mark around 16%. So I think in the most part, I would say around 50-60% have definitely seen this. And then we have around 40% that's saying, well, not really. I know what it is. I've heard about it, but um, not quite sure what it's doing. And then there's 10% that have no idea what they're doing. So, all right. So the next question is, so who has actually read the ISO 21434? And we have the first answer is yes, I have read it. I've memorized it. This is something I know. The second question is I'm reading it, but I'm not finished yet. Uh, you know, probably something that puts you to sleep a little bit, maybe. The third one is I've read the table of contents, so yeah, I've read it. And the last question is no, not yet. Um, so go ahead, put your answers in. We're going to see the results come up right on the screen here. Uh, it looks like most people, so yes, I've read it. We have around 26% saying I've read it. Another 26% have said yes, I'm reading it, but I'm not finished yet. I wonder when they started. And then the last two, I've read the table of contents is around 13%, and of 35% say no, not yet. So guys, thank you for answering. This is kind of a great segue into our talk today. So let's jump over to our presentation for now. First of all, welcome to ASRG. This is, I believe, the 9th webinar. Oops. It's the 9th webinar. If I can get my controls going correctly here. There we go. We have Bastian Kruck today from itemis. He's going to take us through ISO 21434, as we just spoke about. And the title is ISO 21434 by example. Okay. Just 1 second here. Very good. So, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is John Heldreth. I'm the founder of the Automotive Security community called ASRG, or Automotive Security Research Group. So I'm also the product security lead at Porsche Engineering. And today I also have with me Muhammad Abduli. Muhammad, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I hope you are safe and in good health. I am Mohammed Madouli, Senior Manager in Value Egypt. I have an overall 18 plus years of experience, 15 of them is in automotive industry. I had been working with different teams related to software, hardware, and mechanical. Also, I had been working with different nationalities among the world, American, French, German, Indian, Pakistani, Indian, Chinese, Malaysian, and it's. I had a passion to learn about automotive cybersecurity until I found ASRG. I contacted John. Thank you, John, for giving me this opportunity to know more about ESRG. I started to lead ESRG Cairo by myself in November 2019, and now we are almost 800 members in Cairo chapter.
Very good. Mohammed, thank you so much. And the Cairo chapter has been a huge success for ASRG, where in Egypt, actually, we didn't expect such an interest. But as Mohammed said, there is over 800 members in Cairo, Egypt as of today, which is just really great to see such an interest. And Mohammed was setting up everything today for the webinar. So thank you very much, Mohammed. All right. So I'd like to just speak a few minutes about what ASRG is, and then we will go directly into the presentation from Basti. Um, so ASRG is a nonprofit company focusing on the advancement of the automotive security industry. This is a community for you, for the members, to learn, to support, and advance our understanding of bringing security into the automotive products. We're trying to remove the boundaries that can occur in the automotive industry. This can be communication, borders, location, finding ways to learn, finding solutions, making good decisions, because at the end of the day, we all have the same goals. We're trying to keep our customers, our families, our friends, all of our data safe and secure, and this can only be done together. ASRG focuses on three areas of development. This is knowledge, networking, and collaboration. For knowledge, to ensure we, like the people that are working on security solutions for vehicles, making sure that we are making the best decisions and recommendations, and even the integration into the product or the vehicle itself, we need to understand where to find information to learn and build up our own competencies in the industry. So ASRG has a security library. We have a wiki. We're doing webinars now, and in the near future, we will be doing training and also certification. The second part of ASRG focuses on networking. If you can't find the information, then having a network of professionals is very important, that they know where to look. You know, they might have a different experience, they might have a different recommendations, um, but we can't know everything ourselves. But as a community, we are stronger, and together we can support each other to make the right decisions. So for networking, we have many opportunities here. We have a Slack channel. The link is in the YouTube notes here. We also have a Telegram channel where we're always sending all of our different news and articles and stuff like this. We also have uh, Twitter feeds and on LinkedIn as well. So please follow us or participate in the conversation, be a part of the conversation. Um, the last point is collaboration. And since ASRG is a nonprofit, we are unbiased and we offer a space where members and sponsors can innovate outside of your company where you work. This innovation is organized into projects. Some of the examples of these projects include a threat intelligence platform. This is called the ASIP project. We are working also on an ASRG portal. So in the near future, we will be able to log in to our ASRG account, and you will be able to see the threat intelligence dashboards. You'll be able to see the wikis. be able to see the different projects that are available, forums, and so on. Um, if you want to get more involved and create an impact on the industry, please send us an email at hello@asrg.io or contact us over the different social media channels we have. So, um, first of all, at the beginning, we did a quick, little questionnaire about where people are. And ASRG actually has 22 locations over the entire world. And so actually if you want to get in touch with someone on a local level and be more involved and collaborate and build up your network, we have ASRG all over the world here. So in the US, we have 4 different ones currently. In South America, we have Brazil, Recife, UK, Oxford. In Germany, we have 4 different ones. Stuttgart, Munich, Berlin, Rheingebiet, so Frankfurt area. We also have 3 areas in Romania, so Cluj-Napoca, Iași, Bucharest. Tel Aviv is a huge chapter for us as well as Cairo, like Muhammad is leading. And over on the other side of the world, we have Tokyo, we have Shanghai, Singapore, Sydney, and of course in India, Bangalore and New Delhi. So please get involved. Um, Here are the different locations. If you think ASRG is something that would be interesting also in your city, please let us know. Send us an email at hello@asrg.io, and we can start to discuss, maybe it makes sense to bring ASRG to your city, to start it there. Um, and so just we can start this conversation and discuss it. Like I said, we have 22 locations. We have 400 or 4,000 members, excuse me, worldwide as of today. So that's really great to see. I'm happy to see so many people involved and contributing. Very good. We have so many webinars coming up. Guys, every week a webinar. I don't know how long we can do this, but next week we have attacking cars from the cloud, the API way of stealing cars. This is with Evangelos Staikas. He's from Pentest Partners. Then 2 weeks from now, so always on a Thursday, we have protecting automotive intellectual property from insider threats. So usually we're trying to protect from external threats. Here's insider threats, and this is with Christina Letke. She's with Cyber Risk GmbH. And then 3 weeks from now, we have CAN bus versus Ethernet intrusion detection system and intrusion protection system, or prevention system, however you want to call it. And this is with Gilad Banda. He's with Arelu. He'll be talking about CAN bus intrusion detection as well as Ethernet. 4 weeks from now, we have how hacker-powered security can take your organization to the next level. And this is with John Botarny. He's with HackerOne, and he's going to talk a little bit about community-based penetration testing. Then we have CAN bus attacks and mitigations. This is Ken Tyndall from Canis. They've just come up with a new white paper about doing security over CAN. Really interesting stuff as well. So we have many more to come. I can't go through all of them right now, but here's the next few weeks. All right. So I promise I'm not going to talk too much more, but we have a really great talk today. I'm really happy to have Basti here with us. I've worked with him in the past. I know him, and he's working for itemis. He's going to take us through the ISO 21434 by example. So, Basti, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation, John. Good afternoon, folks, and good morning, and whatever time it is for you. Um, as you said, my name is Bastian Kruck. I live in Germany. I studied software engineering. I like to play the upright bass, but I also enjoy giving support with tools to people. So, building domain-specific tools, that's a thing that for which I luckily found itemis. Um, itemis is a consultancy. We are mostly active in Europe with around 200 employees, and we are pretty active in building tools for areas like this in the safety world, now also in the security world, um, also in the finance and taxes area. Um, in general, anywhere where model-driven development is a thing and where you want to make it right somehow, right by design. So that's how we ended up in security a while ago. And now I'm talking today about the ISO and the SAE 21434. And yeah, we'll give you a hint on how we, like the tool guys, take on this one. So the plan is to first give you an overview of it and for example, clarify the terms. Then we will walk into the example that is actually part of the 21434. In the Annex G, there is an example, and we will just walk through it to see how they imagined it. And well, at least we walk through a small part of it. And then I want to show you how we imagine tool support with it, and I planned actually to give a demo on this. Well, there's questions in the end, and I have some overviews prepared for the clauses, so that we don't get bored too early. Yeah, let's go ahead. So the 21434 is in the draft state. That means they published it on February, and you can buy it on ISO.org for I think something like $80. And they had a phase where it was open for public reading and somehow giving feedback to them until May. So that is already closed, as far as I understand. And now they seem to be handing this around on the between the committees, so that they can publish it maybe later this year as a standard. Its purpose is to enable the engineering of component-based systems. They say to keep up with changing technology and attack methods. A good example for me would be if the brakes can be updated now and contain software that can receive an update, we probably need some process that handles this well. How to make this secure that the brakes do what they are supposed to do, and how can we be aware of how bad it is in case there is an exploit available. So that's what it is for. It seems to come out of the road vehicles cybersecurity engineering group there, and they started working on this in 2016. And you might already know, I saw it in the chat that someone asked for the SAE J3061. You might not need it anymore because at some point the 21434 is designed to succeed the J3061. And as far as I understand, the J3061 was designed out of the inspiration to start from more or less the safety world, thinking of 26262. It is much closer to that one, and it seems to be the consensus now that we know much more about how to do these processes on product security, so that the 21434 feels much more away from the safety terminology and more into the what the people are actually already doing out there. Yeah, there will also be this working package from the UN ECE. I think it's 29 that will come up, and actually be making this not optional but mandatory to be implemented, right? But that is also still coming up. For now, we can just read it and to get an overview of what will come up in the future on us and us being car manufacturers, and us at itemis, we also have clients in the automotive area and aviation, but also their suppliers and at the various levels, because the 21434 also talks about the interface between the suppliers and the OEMs. A funny anecdote might be that they talk about the CIA and not the one that you are thinking of, but they call it the cybersecurity interface agreement. So yeah, this abbreviation seems to be overly used around security and also on Earth. Yeah, it not only talks about the conception and about the in the earlier chapters before chapter 9, they talk about the overall how to do a secure project, how to be a secure organization. But they only talk about how to be an organization that builds secure products. They don't talk about this operational security of someone invading the building, but just about how to drive a process that builds secure products. They go on with there's the development, chapter 10, and the validation, but it goes on after the V process, these post-development phases, how they call it, with which they mean the production, clause 12, or the incident response. These out of process efforts of monitoring your sources and getting to know when there's an exploit and what to do then, and finally how to update them. That's also regulated by the 21434, and it provides suggestions on this. Yeah, I guess I already spoke about most of this. In the end, it allows us to do security by design. So to build in right from the beginning and make the right thoughts and make the right decisions at the right point in the process. And that sounds like something I mentioned earlier, right? Something by design. Yeah, we will come back to this later on. But that's why itemis and me, we are interested in that and think that there is space for building tool support. For now, we will focus on the threat analysis and risk assessment. To not break my tongue, I'll speak about Terra, which is sort of I guess, what I know about the ASRG audience, there are a lot of pretty technical security guys that are mostly the hands-on actual security experts, and they will have the most touch points with that one, I think. So that's the basic process of running a Terra. We can see that it starts with the item definition. So the definition of the system that we are evaluating, and it splits up into two branches. One for considering what is to be damaged, what is the impact of something breaking, and the other branch is about what is when we attack it, what is how hard is it to drive an attack, and so on. That's maybe reminds of the safety world that we are still again multiplying something in the end or combining some values to come to the resulting risk level. Even though it's a bit different in the security, because we have this attack feasibility, which not at all is like a probability, right? That might be why the processes diverge so much. And before I get to too deep detail on this, let's just jump over the terms here. I already mentioned item definition, and with item, they don't mean the component, but the whole system that we are currently considering, like in scope for the analysis, for the security analysis. So the item contains components, functions, data, connections. The asset identification is where we are identifying system elements, like components, that are to be protected. And we also decide for which security properties we want to take care. Again, another CIA, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability would be one framework for that. That are the three security properties we take into consideration here. Threat scenarios are the sort of the roots of an attack that may be guided, and they may be enumerated from the target system. So walking through all the system elements and considering how can I attack it, what can I do to make something unintended with it. Or they might also be derived from the assets, right? Walking over the things that I already made some decisions on what is a relevant thing to be protected, and maybe I start with these things to think about if that is important, how I can break it, how can I break it. Yeah, the impact is we're jumping over here to the top right. Impact rating is the thing where we are thinking about how bad is it if it breaks. So we look at this in regarding a couple of impact categories, which are safety, financial, operational, and privacy. And for each damage scenario, we are making considerations on this. We'll see that later on. The attack path is to be identified where we build up the attack trees. You probably know a lot about these parts. We need to rate the attacks, how hard they are to be performed. And finally, yeah, after we determine the risk level for each threat scenario, we will need to also make a decision on what to do with it. So we can avoid it, we can reduce it, for example, with by bringing in some control and encrypting something also. We can transfer it to maybe to some other party, or maybe it is that low that we think maybe that risk exists, but it is low enough so that we can just accept it and still deliver the product in a meaningful full way. So these are part of the clause 3 of the 21434, these terms. And now we can already jump into an example to get our hands dirty. This is just an exempt of these of this NXG, and it's just an excerpt. And actually, they made two analyses from two example companies. So, and one company could do it in this flavor or in the other flavors, and we can see when reading this how these also differ. But what they have in common is that they are just tables on A4 pages. So that's might not be the way how you want to do it in the end, right? In this example, we have a headlamp, and its function that we consider is that it can be turned off and can be turned on. There's some body ECU which sends that signal to turn it off or on via the CAN bus. And on the CAN bus, there's also a gateway with a navigation system connected to it, which has a cellular and a Bluetooth interface. So that might be a nice point to enter the system as an attacker. So to start off with the item definition, we are already done with it. We can go on with identifying the assets, right? So these two functions we've been speaking about, and we can now iterate over each each security property and consider if it is relevant to be considered. Well, turning on and off the light will be visible for the people who are standing next to it, right? So let's keep it out of our scope for now to make these things confidential. But the integrity might be relevant. So unexpectedly switching it on would be a scenario that we can think of, or unexpectedly switching it off. That's something an attacker might want to do bad things. Also the availability. So in other words, if the switch is not working, then it's unavailable, right? So I might not be able to turn it off or on. That's also some things, some assets to be considered. By the way, these damage scenarios, they are somehow part of the asset identification in the 21434. They're all part of this section 8.3. In our thoughts so far, we have had this as a separate phase, but maybe that's just a matter of flavor and taste. So we have these 4 damage scenarios, and now we want to figure out what is the impact they are actually imposing if they break. So for each damage scenario, we walk through the categories and ask the question, how bad will it be? So that safety-wise, unexpectedly switching it off, if I'm driving at light, that will be a major thing because I might actually drive into a tree and possibly die from it. Financially, there's no direct financial consequences for any of the scenarios. Similarly, it's about the privacy. We don't mind about it on these scenarios. But operationally, if anything with the headlamp doesn't work anymore, that will be a major thing because we will need to go to the workshop, right? If switching the lamp on is impossible, we consider this a safety, a moderate safety damage. Well, and we meaning the 21434 in that example. Well, maybe that is because people might still be driving around with this in the when it's not too dark yet, but that will still impose a safety issue. So we did the impact rating, and now we need to go for the other branch to look for how easy is it to make this damage come true. How hard is it? So at first, we identified some threat scenarios. Again, this is just a small excerpt. But spoofing a CAN message on this bus here, that might be a nice scenario. If you can spoof a turning on message or a turn off message on the CAN, then we would be doing good. Yielding that damage we've been discussing, that impact. But also flooding a CAN bus could be another kind of attack, right? And 21434 does not really classify them into categories, but we found it useful to sometimes think of them as such. Right there, this is a DOS, a denial of service attack, and you might know the STRIDE framework, which is something that might turn out to be useful here to iterate and generate threat scenarios. We identified 2 attack paths. I already hinted you on the cellular and the Bluetooth interface. And in this example, I think that is now with the that might be where we diverge a bit from the 21434 example with how we set the values then for these attack steps. Because here we wanted to see some nice results, so we thought of the cellular interface having an available exploit. I think there actually was some case where some people entered the car over the cellular interface a while ago, right? So might be realistic to that extent. And the second step, actually they are sharing, because crafting the CAN message will be the similar thing once I broke into the navigation ECU. So they both attack paths we identified, they both share this second step. That is not the as fuck level, but the attack feasibility level, right? Don't confuse that. And that is the one that we want to rate now. So we did the identified threat scenarios and we found some attack paths, and now we are rating the feasibility. And it might be worth mentioning that 21434 actually leaves it open to you how to do it. Nonetheless, they recommend 3 methods to choose from. And let's start at the bottom. Using the predominant attack vector from CVSS, or how they do it in CVSS, that is something that you might actually want to do if you don't have a lot of information yet, because it just takes into consideration the context of the attack, so how close you need to be to it, and it yields only simply the attack level. It's pretty simple in that sense that you don't need a lot of information and can do it in very early stages and very abstract stages. Another one would be to just use the exploitability of CVSS. I'm not too familiar with it, but they have some dimensions which they somehow have a formula to put it in then. And so far, we've been focusing also in the examples. They also been focusing on basing the rating on attack factors that each rate somehow the attack potential. And it seems to be inspired by the 18045 ISO IAC. But I haven't read it. So let's go for the attack factors. The attack potential factors have 5 parameters, and not only the parameters, also the levels and when to use the levels are defined in 21434 as a guideline, as a suggestion. So expertise would be one. If there is an available exploit, it might be easy to do it as a layman, right? While if you need to reverse engineer near the stack they are using and find some exploit yourself, you might need to be an expert. And crafting the message might also be an expert task. There's the window of opportunity that wants to be evaluated. What equipment you need, what time you need to prepare that, and which knowledge you need. And if we now look for the attack feasibility of our path that results, we can see that it comes out a medium value. So let's not get confused here. We can indeed assign a number to each of these levels, and that's also what 21434 already provides, such numbers and how to sum this up to come to a resulting attack feasibility level. But we don't want to do this for each attack step. Instead, we want to have a look at who do you need to be and what do you need to have to perform the whole path of the attack. So we take the for the attacker worse value along each parameter. Like if you need to be a layman and an expert, then being an expert is the thing the threshold you need to cross, right? Or similarly here, if some part of it takes a week and the other part takes a month, then in the end you will need a month for it to be done as an attacker. And summing up these according to the 21434 will in our case yield a medium attack level, attack feasibility level. Similarly, for the second attack path, we get out a low level. We have a similar effect here. Unlimited and moderate will turn into us considering a moderate window of opportunity, or this whole thing might take up to 6 months to be performed. So the attack through the Bluetooth interface is currently considered a pretty low feasible thing. Now we can put these two things together, the impact rating, which we did with the damage scenarios, major and moderate, and the attack feasibility rating. We had some medium and some low feasibilities out of it. And in this situation, we want to go for of course, for the attacker will choose the easier path, and we need to assume that the attackers will impose the worst damage. So we take the medium and the major, and also contained in the 21434 and NXJ, there's a table in which we can just look it up. And it might be worth mentioning here that they decided to have these 3 groups of these levels, attack feasibility, and the impact rating and the risk levels to be distinct. So if I say 2, I know I'm talking about a risk level. If I say medium, I know I'm talking about an attack feasibility. And that's a pretty good idea, I think, to not end up in confusions. So in this case, we will end up with a risk level of 3. And well, we need to know that 1 is the lowest risk level. So a very low feasible, very little feasible attack that can cause a severe damage is still considered a risk of 1. But if it's a very feasible thing to perform this to yield this lot of damage, lot of impact, it will be a 5, and that's the scale. So you can see it's like getting less and less from top right to the bottom and to the left. So that's how we came to the risk value for this particular threat scenario. This risk has a level of 3, and now we can go on considering if this is an issue, if this is too high, and usually we will want to put the highest risks. We want to try to put them down, right? With taking some action. So yet how to practically perform it, that's not what we have been speaking about yet, because it seems that what we just did on the slide was a very small subset. Well, later on we will also only look at a small subset, but it seems clear to me that even though you do the same, if you do this and on a real setting, you will have hundreds of threat scenarios and so on. So doing this in a spreadsheet and manually looking these numbers up is certainly not the intended way, nor a doable one. So how to practically run this? That's where we at itemis feel like that's something where we can provide value and are experienced with, to provide tools for a process that is already known, for a domain that we can investigate in. Some things that we can observe already was that we will have some attack steps that we want to reuse. So the attack trees will actually not be trees, but the computer science guys will know it's going to be a directed acyclic graph. Another thing worth mentioning is that 21434 does not really talk a lot about how to incorporate controls into the analysis. It seems to me that they aim at modifying the values that were put in. So when I performed a control, then I will actually have made some attack harder to perform, or maybe a control could also be, I don't know, some insurance, so that I lowered some impact and I kept some impact financially. That seems to be how they intended to be modeled, if you are according to the norm. But it seems to us that this is not how you want to be working practically, because you are planning this, right? And how should you decide which control is a good one to be performed if you need to change multiple numbers at a time, and then and in the end, how do you compare it then? While making all these changes, you're being busy doing these changes, and that's why we feel like that should be something like a primary citizen to be modeling controls and to be able to see and compare control scenarios. Control scenario is a term that rather comes from us, and it's also was a bit surprising for us. The term controls there is only used in late stages. Beforehand, they are only talking about the security concept and the security requirements when they're still in conception. At least for me, that was a bit of a shift in vocabulary. Not to forget that these also will lead to new assets, and that's where it can get messy if you are fiddling around with the things you already estimated. Because if the control would be an encryption, you will be introducing we will need to introduce some data with it, which is the key. And where is it stored? If it is a shared key across all devices, how hard is it to extract that key out of the car? Because if I could do so, I could easily drive this control effectless. And so there will be new assets and new security objectives and so on to be considered for the stuff that controls change in the system. And we need to take that into consideration when when evaluating if a control makes sense and how it changes the overall risk. The risk assessment must be updated iteratively. We already noticed that, maybe when introducing controls, but also maybe we just have a refined design. The development was doing hard work, and we want to refine our analysis, because so far we've been maybe using just this attack vector as an approximation of the attack feasibility. And now, since we know a lot more about how they do it technically, which version of libSSL they're using, and all these details, we can get a lot more specific into which attacks are feasible. And then I can tell you a lot of a lot of stuff will change in this analysis. Nonetheless, this analysis needs to carry throughout the whole process, and we don't want to lose knowledge along this path. So it's going to be a tough challenge to have a true artifact that is the true source of truth, yet walking along these paths along the process and along a number of teams. So maintaining all information manually will probably yield some mistakes that will be hard to find and have undesired effects on our knowledge about the state of the product security. Okay. I don't want us to get lost in how we approach this. In general, it is good to understand that we are made up some meta model. We like that's what we do at as a domain specific experts. We build up some meta model to understand the domain in some discrete evaluatable way that the machines will understand and that is clearly defined and that's what we did here. Most of the fun happens with security objectives, attack steps, and controls and assumptions. Worthwhile noting that security objective is not really a core part that the 21434 introduces. It's rather something like which we observed as a joint point. It is pretty close to what an asset is, but to our understanding, an asset is just the tuple of connecting a component with a security property. But our security objectives also have a relationship to the attack step, to the threat scenarios, and to the damage scenarios. So that's why we decided for that term. And it's also that controls will depend on these security objectives, right? They are indeed a node in the tree. That's something we can see here on this on the same analysis. We can now build up some kind of this graph, and if we have this graph in our tool, then we can do good reasoning on it and build good tooling for it. It's interesting maybe that we realized after we created a threat scenario and a security objective, we sometimes are able to make suggestions that are indeed a valuable thing if you have hundreds of elements. So if spoofing of CAN message is an attack you can perform on the bus, well, a spoofing attack on this bus will usually will address data that are flowing on this bus, and not just the data in general, but the integrity of these data. So this is a relationship we can actually derive as a tool and provide suggestions. It's also that we have introduced a prepared by relation between the attacks so that we can deduplicate, in this case, we deduplicate the threat by just having it pointing to the crafting the CAN message and then formulating it as an OR of pointing to either cellular or the Bluetooth attack step as a preparation. By the way, there's also the AND combination of attacks that in some cases I might need to do both. That would be another way to express all this, right? We will see it later on in the demo. Well, of course, it's then easy to do the math. Well, conceptually easy to carry the numbers around and come to useful risk values automatically without any mistakes that come from just mistyping something or so. And if we take controls and the controls assets into consideration, well, maybe I should say a word about the control. We will hopefully come at this again. If our showcase here was that we are sending malicious messages to let the attacker turn on or off the headlamp unexpectedly, then a message whitelisting for this gateway would allow us to just say to just not mention the headlamp on and headlamp off requests as valid messages that would come out of the navigation system. because they never do. Why should the navigation system have control over the headlamp? So that would be a control which depends on the security objective that this whitelist stays in integer. And if it is not, if the integrity of it was hurt, maybe because it's stored in writable memory space, well, then we can craft an attack to manipulate this list. And this will, of course, need us to have entered the system already. But if we are on that navigation system and the list is writable from there, we need to perform that attack, and again end up in hurting the integrity of the message, which will lead to the headlamp turning off and on unexpectedly. So that's something to be considered, and that's where the math can get complicated. Because if you remember it right, we are considering the attack factors, and we need to carry actually the whole attack factors along these paths. And when there is a control that says, okay, I will lower this to be very low, well, we have a couple of paths to be calculated now from here. And that's actually how it works, how we implemented it, that we are carrying a couple of values along this tree, usually backwards, then the arrows are pointing in here, and are considering all the attack paths that are possible, that are modeled. So that much about our approach to it. And now I would like to show you how we implemented it in our tool. As you know, that is what we're doing here. And we call this the YAKINDU Security Analyst, which is a tool to do exactly that, to support you in performing nice terrors that are conformed to the ISO21434 without getting messed up with Excel spreadsheets or worse. So let's see if my tech stack works well. Okay, so on the left hand, I have the figure that we saw before. We just saw it horizontally, and I made it vertical here so that we can keep track of the terror process. And I would suggest that we just walk through the system and have a look at how these similar, like the single steps, are modeled. So the item definition is actually part of clause 9. We can see here how the item was probably partially imported, and our users, we observed them to, usually they are still modeling this a lot of this stuff manually, because it is not really a common thing to have all the security relevant details of the system in the architecture, which is technically present. So they end up modeling components and connections in here. And we can already see the actuator of the headlamp here, and there's the CAN bus, and somewhere along the line we end up with the navigation ECU, right? So the item definition is already there. And what's next? We can go on with identifying the assets. So here we have the a list of the assets of the system elements that are present and modeled, and they are not assets yet. We still can decide to turn them into assets. So John, maybe you can give me a hint on, there's the lamp off request, and we are asked if we should demand confidentiality for it. So give me your guess on how we decide, how we're going to decide.
Well, if we're evaluating data here, the data that's being sent on the bus is probably not confidential, right?
We will not care a lot about this, right?
I don't think so.
We just click reject, and that's how we how the system now remembers our decision on this one. Yet on some other cases, it might be a relevant thing to take into consideration, like switching the lamp off, like the integrity of this one, the integrity will be something that we want to consider. That's already accepted, and it created a security objective in the background. So blowing up the car would be one damage scenario, but maybe not the one we are aiming for here. But we could create it inline here. Instead, which one should we take?
Switches off unexpectedly, right?
I think so. That is the switch off request. And if we hurt the integrity of it, yeah, that will make the headlamp turn off unexpectedly.
That's right. And you're on the function level right now, right?
Right now, I'm looking at the functions, yes. It seems to be a useful thing to, during the asset identification, just merely focus on the functions and data. And that means on the component level, we commonly already have covered the things that we care about. Because we care about the function, that is the damage that is created when the function is broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Commonly. Okay. I think I already mentioned that threat scenarios play a special role for us, and this, let's skip this stuff for now, the threat scenarios, and go on with the impact rating. So I can just navigate to the damage scenario, which we just referenced. And here we have the severe impact level again. It is life-threatening, and well, we usually take the maximum, like the worst of these damages, right? We end up with a severe impact. Opposed to that, it turning on unexpectedly will maybe not be such a bad thing. So it's just serious because of the operational impact. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and so Basti, you're actually defining the damage of, so translating from a technical what happens if we lose the confidentiality or the integrity of the headlamp data, switching on or off, and translating this into company specific damages, right?
Exactly. So if your company maybe has an important brand to be protected, that might be also some damage dimension that you might want to consider. And actually, that's something you could add as an impact category later on. Maybe that's the brand. Yeah, but in general, that's the convention to have these four, and we can actually change this to be irreversible impact on personal information. And that, okay, it already was severe, so maybe that's a bad example. But if it's not life-threatening, but will not do any harm, it will automatically change to serious only. That's how we.
So you're assigning damage to the security goals, right? That's what we're doing.
Exactly. And these damage scenarios are a way to contain correlated damages and to also pull these processes apart of, well, about the damage scenarios, we might want to be talking with maybe with the function owners rather, with the people who know about the functions and overall about the things that can go wrong and the considerations, the policies the company has. And they are then assigned to security objectives. So I could also assign this one to multiple ones. So again, this is a point of deduplicating it, because the integrity of switching it off, switching it on, well, in this case, it will not make sense to use it here. But in other cases, of course, the same damage could be yielded by various objectives, by various attacks.
Okay, so you assign the damage to the asset or the security objective, and then what do you do next?
Okay, so that's here we got the security objective. Remember the integrity and this function, they together form the asset, and we have the damage scenario here, which was connected. And next we can look at the threats. So walking down, we will end up now in the attack path analysis, right? Clause 8.6. And as you can see here, these are the three attacks that we already had in the example. We can craft the message to turn the headlamp off. And we need to do one of the two things, either compromise it via cellular interface or via Bluetooth. Here we can also see it.
That's really nice.
So the attack feasibility, we can see that this attack step needs to be performed, and then here we decided for the, well, of course, for the easier one. The attacker will choose the door if there is a door and not run through the wall. And that's we already see the colors are the attack feasibility levels, which come from assigned to each of these steps. And that might be something we could look at up next, rating the attack feasibility. Shall we do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is getting really interesting. Also a little complex, yeah. And I hate, as I know from my experience of doing this with Excel tables, right now I'm probably already lost and in the fifth or sixth different page.
Uh-huh. By the way, you don't need to, if you loved your Excel pages, you can still do tables, but in a way that probably will be more comfortable,
No,
because you cannot do syntax errors here. You can just select the things you like.
to be honest, I'm not the happiest person with risk assessments in Excel, so I'm glad to see that there's a different way to do it.
All right. So let's have a look at the attacks, maybe. Rating the feasibility, I already explained the method behind. And here we can see actually that these, since they are connected to this security objective, you can already see also here the inherited impact which each of it has. So that's a useful thing to also already here get some sort of a preview on the resulting risk. So we can also see here the Bluetooth interface will eventually lead to a risk of level 4, while the cellular interface will lead to a worse risk. While this is still, this is again per attack step and not for, oh, actually this should be considering the whole paths indeed. That's where we did this rating, right? And changing something here will update the whole.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about the feasibility categories. So you mentioned, that layman might be something that someone can attack cellular, but probably not. But so you have different defined categories here. Where do these categories come from?
As I mentioned, they stem from that particular ISO, which number I forgot originally. But it's also that the 21434 suggests these. In our tool, you can actually, if you decide that some of this is not is called differently or differs in your organization, if you have different policies, you can. This is also data, right? You can also craft this to your particular process, and maybe we don't call this expertise, but we call this education. And maybe we have a fourth level, a fifth level here, which is level John. So
You can just put master there.
So here we can now select the level 4.
Okay.
And that will be, you will need to be even more skilled here, like a master.
So you can actually define all of the different levels, depending on how your company views this. It could be in your company's policy or something, or risk assessment methodology, to define these different categories and which level is what the definition is for each level.
Exactly.
Okay.
It also allows for a description here. So only if they got a lot of experience, and that will allow you to, if you do the analyses, to have a lot of support. Well, that was the original idea, to support you in doing this And if you're not aware of what is 3 or what is 4, you can just have a look at the comments there. So we didn't give a description here, but for that one, we can have these clearly defined rules and just copy them out of our policy and have these sort of assessment models in a like right within the tool.
Very nice. And you have different numerics there. So for each different category, it seems that there is a numerical or quantitative calculation going on.
Exactly. So once we are done with propagating them along the paths, we will need to figure out a resulting feasibility level, like aggregating all these values somehow. And even that is configurable for us, but for now we are selecting here the accumulation. So it accumulates all these options, and impact transformations are something we will talk about when we talk about assumptions and controls, which means we sum them up, and the resulting feasibility level will be, well, one of those 4s. Depending on the number that comes out of it, we will see maybe it's 14 that will be medium.
Okay. So actually what you're trying to do here is make almost a qualitative type based assessment on top of a quantitative. So to dumb it down a little bit, or you could actually use here the numbers if you wanted as well.
You could. Yet in security, it is not as in safety that we can just look up the number, right? I guess it is a qualitative decision that you have to do here. So it wouldn't make sense to discuss if something would be a 13 or a 14, because that's pretty, like, then the probability is higher that you get lost in details. So that's why I would assume that it makes sense to have these numbers only behind the curtain for now.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that to be able to explain this to management, we need to have it at a certain level, understanding.
Yes, and also have it comparable, not just across the people and across the projects, but even across departments. We will do analyses and somehow need to aggregate the results, right? So it needs to be a clear thing, and it needs to also hold legal rules to why did we decide for this one and for that, not for that one. So
Nope.
that's
Yeah,
also
very
something
good.
to take into consideration. That needs to be defendable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to make a nice example, let's go back to this being a layman, because even the script kiddie can download that exploit until we fixed it. And yeah, we can see the risk levels. So the step of determining the risk is actually something that we, now we are just showing the path for this particular attack, but let's go back to showing the path for the whole, everything that is related to this, to this objective.
Basti, before you
Yeah.
continue, just to clarify here, on top here we have the security goal in blue. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or,
yes.
and then one level below we have the potential attack. Is that correct?
Exactly. These are the attack steps that we are performing, or that we modeled, that we considered to be relevant to break this security objective.
Okay, and so we haven't seen any controls yet.
Not yet. We will come to this at the end. So it's just 2 more steps. While, well, the risk determination is an easy one, because there is no manual step in here. It is just computed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's the reporting could be something of relevance here, because it's also about communicating the findings back to the guys who developed this, to the architects and so on.
Okay.
So for that, we have a report that you can customize, and you can where you can add values and configure this in a way that it fits your needs and your company, and then you can export it as a PDF or as a docx, and basically just send it over. It will contain not just basically everything we just did, the textual things rather in a bit more tabulary format, maybe close to what we saw in the beginning on the PowerPoint. Because for reading it and for looking something up, that we found that this might indeed be a useful representation. And maybe it's useful to have a look here. This risk distribution chart plots the risks that we've identified. So there is a risk of level 5 here, which is the one we are just looking at here, right? For this security objective, there is this risk of level 5 resulting from a high attack feasibility and a severe impact. So that's a good way to display all the risks, and to on one hand, as you said, the manager can then see on one hand how far are we on one side, how far are we, and how much work needs to be done to until we can consider this something that is finished.
Right. Yeah, I didn't mean to jump to the end, but it's really important to be able to communicate results to the people that need them, and that's perfect. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Of course. Still, we might want to the risk treatment, as it is part of the 21434. It asks for deciding for each risk, what you want to do with it. So these are the formal steps that you could do. There's a minor difference which I keep messing up between avoiding and transferring it, I think. So in the end, you can accept it, and you can decide that this is the responsibility of someone else, and or this can also be considered out of scope, or you can decide this to be reduced, which then would be, according to 21434, will be the need for something to be done, some action to be taken to reduce it. And that's where it gets what looks a bit unfinished, because it talks about controls, but only at the steps at the phases where it's already in development, or at least later on when it got refined with technical details. But I think we also already want to take we also already talk about controls once we do the very first analysis, because in some places I just know this will need to be signed and this will need to be encrypted, and to me it feels like a natural way to model this already as a control up front. And 21434 doesn't really tell us how to fit this, how to feed these things into the Itera, into the analysis. So from now on, it's gonna be rather our best guess on what how they are doing it, or in other words, the process that we find very quite approachable for that issue. So we've been talking about the whitelisting. Remember that?
Yeah.
And an easy thing here would be if we have a control that says I'm whitelisting which messages the navigation ECU may send. I can tell it to be mitigating a particular of these attacks. Let's say this one. So if I now reload my my graphing view, you can see that there's something green appearing, and that's the control you've been looking for. I guess.
Yeah.
So now the attack feasibility up here turned green, because even though we take them all into consideration, the control will actually push it down to be a green attack feasibility, right? To be why is that? Because that is one of the things where we can easily get confused. These factors combine into a low feasibility, but I think since the factors are first combined and afterwards summed up, we end up even in a green feasibility. So that's something can easily get confused. So now we have the control in place, and we can see that everything is nice, isn't it? We have a green risk. We're done. All good.
Looks better than before, right?
Yeah, just that we also need to consider the asset, as I mentioned a couple of times. So if I now tell this control to depend on actually the integrity of that whitelist being maintained, then this stuff starts to look a bit different again. Because now we can see out of a sudden a security objective doesn't need to be on the top, but can also appear again down here, which is just the asset that was introduced with this control. It doesn't need to have a damage scenario, although it could. It doesn't need to have a damage scenario assigned to it, because actually just the effect that the control will turn inactive, that is already the damage that it creates. So in the end, through the propagation path, it in the end will yield this impact that is connected to it. Well, and of course we modeled an attack for it that will attack them at this request to that whitelist, basically turning off this control.
Mhm.
So I can still give you some shocking news a bit. That's already how many elements we got in this tiny toy example. So it will indeed be a quite some challenge to keep an overview of the whole analysis if you don't have such a tool at hand. We also have these buttons to see the path up to here, or see all the elements that are connected to this particular node. So here we can see only the attack that is part of this control up to its security objectives, but the other two attacks in this case are hidden, because I told it to show me only that. If I told it to show me everything, it gets really a lot.
Yeah, and it looks like it can be complex, especially
Yes.
when you have controls that could affect other security goals, or if you're trying to use a particular control to affect more than just one or two different types of attacks.
Exactly. And there might also be cases where the security objectives depend on each other, right? Or where you want to do an assumption on the maybe on the surrounding, which is formally a bit of a different thing, but has a similar effect than a control, because it changes the stuff that I consider, and changes the values. So all these things actually should be fed in here.
Mhm.
And what I didn't show you yet, we can compare scenarios here. So in here I can select if I want to. Can I? Give it to me. Here I can select the uh, the the controls that I want to be active for now. And if I make this mark this as the one that we want to see in the graphing, you can see that there's something. Scrolling on Mac is a bit tricky. You can see that this one has turned red again, because that control is still there, but it's not active. So for now, for modeling, I can switch back and forth between scenarios, because sometimes we want to take into consideration even multiple controls being applied as a package, and we can do that. Now we can look at the scenario. I need to enable it. We can look at the scenario of enabling both of them, or yeah, actually that's the same like listing all, because my model doesn't contain all. That's how we can start playing with what controls there are, because they are always, I think, also a consideration of the budget, of how much money can we spend for this, and which one is the best we can do for that budget, which one is the best risk reduction we can do, which is not always a trivial question.
So you can actually, with this tool, I mean, you can do it with Excel as well, but with this tool, we can switch on and off the different controls, right? And then we can evaluate the difference in risk between different scenarios. And those different scenarios might have different impacts on cost or time, or even technical feasibility in a project.
Exactly. And while modeling, you will usually focus on one particular scenario. That's why we have it like with this checkbox. Yet in the risk report, in the result report, you will actually see a comparison of all these scenarios, and that will allow your manager to actually see, or whoever makes the decision, to to be informed about the scenarios you considered and why you, and be also able to archive what you took into consideration and why you selected this particular approach. So there is the damage scenario. Which one is it? I think it's this. There's a risk comparison table. Risks table. I think it's this one. That will show these comparisons then. Yeah.
Very cool.
I think that's the most for now. We can easily go on afterwards with talking a lot about it and trying to break it. For now, I want to just summarize that we think that the tool support is essential to handle this complexity when doing cybersecurity for component-based systems. And this table-based approaches, like in a spreadsheet, they do not scale for larger systems, and they will not allow you to have that kind of a important document being flowing through the whole process. But you will have a lot of work to be redone, and a lot of repetitive work usually leads to mistakes. Our model-based approach, we think it helps to keep it manageable. And as I mentioned, the UN ECE will not let you go. So you will actually need to have a solution for that, just legally, and out of moral responsibility, you will also need to have a good process to make these decisions. And when you find an exploit, you will be able to just open that analysis and maybe modify it, because now we have, for example, figured out that it's actually not that easy, but still to use it, you need to be a proficient one. You can just re-export it and look at the results, what happens with these news, and you can have little work with a lot of information that will help you in making the decision for the next step. So my name is Bastian Kruck, still. I work for itemis, and I also wanted to mention we are working together with Geneva. We're members of it, and there we have a security group where we've been reading this actually together. So that's knowledge that I showed here. Actually, we've been having such like a reading group, and where we've having calls, especially with some guys in Detroit there, and we are trying to push a bit the visibility and showing that like informing people on this, like I did right now, also in that group from Geneva. So if there's going to be a summit where Geneva's security group is talking, probably that's going to be related to our work here. And one last request: we are trying to build up a sort of a knowledge base for the 21434 related work and for risk assessment. That is security-analyst.org. And if you scan this nice QR code, you can actually see a 10-minute video of the demo that I just gave. Well, most of the demo that I just gave right there, and that's maybe a good thing to take away if you're interested in that thing, in how that worked, if I was talking too fast or however. So even I got some overview still about the clauses. I guess that's rather boring to walk through these. So that's it from my plan for the strict plan for today.
Yeah, Basti, thank you so much for going through it with us. The theoretical side of it from the ISO 21434, but also in application as well of attacking this risk assessment topic. So I have some questions for you, and I have some questions from the audience as well. Actually, if you do have questions, please write them in the live chat window, and then I will convey them to Basti. But Basti, while we're waiting for some more questions to come, so first of all, I think that modeling is the way to go. Because this is a complex topic, and unfortunately Excel has its limits, not only in usability, but also in understanding the results. First of all, itemis product, I think it's really nice. But are there other products that also do this, the modeling of risk assessments?
You could also consider some kind of Excel spreadsheets as products when looking at how well spread they are. I think there's a set of tables from Daniel Angermeier, which is pretty popular around Europe, and there is Bill Mazzara, who is having a similar thing going on in the US, to my knowledge. But despite this, there's also some other attempts to do this, and they usually come from the safety world, and try to bend their safety tools into having security plugins. And that's maybe a bit having this similar issues, I think, like the 3061, as I said. The Hera and the Terra, they have some common letters, but in fact they turn out to be quite different when it comes to their processes, because in the security there's this so much need for iterating, and in the safety tools, the probability of how often this kind of ventral breaks, the probability usually doesn't change anymore after you designed it, right? So that might be something workflow wise that is still a bit of the part of the DNA of such safety tool based approaches.
But what I see here is actually that the product itself is probably not changing, right? So when you have something in fields, I mean, you can be updating it over software updates, but the operating environment. So as when you have a product in the field itself, actually the environment is being able to learn about that product. There's more research being done. There's more hacks being attacked. And actually the risk for a vehicle in the field actually continuously increases with time. So
Exactly.
time is always playing a factor in your risk assessments. And this is why it's so important to have, from my point of view, something that can be updated or maintained, not on a 6-month basis, not on a yearly basis, but really almost on a weekly or however fast you can do that.
If it runs software, it will be updated, and it will change a lot with each update, as usual. Exactly.
Okay. Good. And then I wanted to ask you about have you put a whole vehicle? We just saw a simple function here. Um, have you put a whole vehicle into this type of modeling?
Mm. We had some customers asking for that and sending us some like providing us with some example models of a high size. Mm. So one part is we observed this to be on the first step of introducing it. People were still running this rather on the item was a rather small unit of a particular component of a particular project. So that's why on this stage we didn't have the request first. Now, since we have had these requests, we've been looking at how we scale up with the data, and looking into some performance issues in the last year. And as of now, I think you could. I think it would be worth a try. But I would consider this experimental, also because I'm unsure how manageable it gets then. I mean, consider putting the whole vehicle in this Excel spreadsheet. It will simply turn unresponsive, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something which we are interested in, but that would be rather be the next level, right? How was it the saying that when first we tape our tools, first we shape our tools and then they shape us. So that would be a way of, now that is possible, now that it is possible to join these analyses because they are consistent and have a joined assessment model and so on. Now we can go for this one, but we don't have. It's not as established as just replacing the spreadsheet yet.
Okay. All right, so we do have a question from the audience. What about tool classification quantification for this tool. Something like this was in earlier drafts of the 21434, and if you use it in the development of 26262 relevant products, it might be needed. Do you think this will be necessary or not, and why?
So far, it wasn't necessary, as it is our artifact is just, I mean, legally our artifact is a PDF, right, that you can still verify separately. And I think that's why it's legally not that strict of a requirement. Maybe once it comes up, this will be something we'll be glad to face. Actually, our company, I think, is doing a 27001, but that might be that might be not sufficient for some cases, of course. So yeah, that's still up ahead.
Okay. Very good. Um, and where do you see this going in the future, Basti? Like, so you going from Excel to model-based risk assessment, is there a next step or is there a future innovation? What can we expect?
Well, the next step would be to integrate it all, right? So I think in a company there are a lot of handovers and a lot of time we spend with typing things from one tool into another, and that's sort of the DNA of the model-driven consultancies like us. We actually want to integrate all the tools you use in a way that you only have to think and make the decisions and inform yourself as a security analyst, but also as any other person involved in the process. Think of auditors or policymakers. So that would be maybe my dream of it. That it doesn't have to be one tool and one platform that everyone uses. These ideas usually don't live long, but it might be a good thing to have all this integrated in a nice way. For example, one way of integrating is already available, so that we can export the stuff as XML, as a particular XML, and import it. And we put a lot of thoughts into how to make this in a way that fits your use case. For example, thinking of an intelligence database, if you are able to pull out the data for particular threats, and if something changes there, you would usually maybe go into all. Do you need to go into all your projects and open it up to see if that issue is, if that change is relevant to you? I'm unsure if that is the case. So our next step was that you can export it if you export it in the right XML format, you can actually import it into our analyst to just update these specific risk attack feasibility values. So if a 0-day comes out in our white paperish in our idea vision, as soon as the 0-day comes out, you could automatically update these projects, import this stuff, the changes into them, and see if the risks change in a relevant way. This will probably never be fully automated, but it will, at least if there's some changes, at least if such threat class is instantiated, is used there, it will maybe put up a red flag and send you an email to tell you should look at this project. And that's how the network starts, right? How the tool starts really supporting us in driving our attention where it should be.
Okay, great. Just one last question here. Well, two last quick questions. One is,
Okay.
can you use other Terra methods like Heavens?
Yes, you can.
I think the ISO 21434 is actually open to all frameworks. It's only
And we are open to way more than 21434 is actually. Also, that speaking it in that way. For example, this kind of suggestions of traversing the system model, that is also something that you can configure and say that from data, you can usually go to its subdata to its parent data, for example. So this traversal lines is customizable, and there's a lot of things that you can actually customize as a policymaker in your company. So I'm pretty sure that if it is something that was there before, we can quite certainly at least support you in configuring it, even if it's not always as easy to explain it itself, like
Okay.
how are impacts combined and so on.
And for offboard components, can you also use Tara as a risk assessment method?
What is an off-board component?
I would assume offboard means that components outside the vehicle.
Well, of course, as soon as it is in some way component based, you can use it for that. Also, maybe Internet of Things applications also can be thought with this. So there is sequences that we didn't use here, but that you can use to describe data flows. And if it has boxes and arrows in between that are the relevant part of the analysis, then you can use our tool for it. Right? There's
Okay.
channels and data flowing in them, and so on.
All right. And just, sorry, one last question here. Regarding OEMs and tier ones for risk rating, it's my understanding, right, that those are arbitrary between tier ones and OEMs. So it looks like the risk ratings themselves could be configured for OEMs and tier ones differently, if I understand the question correctly.
That that's okay for me. Me as a tool builder, we support that. So our idea so far is that we have some separate model that will be also read-only in a lot of situations for the analyst. So that could be something that we hand over to the supplier and tell them, like if it's someone who's also, if it's part of the contract that they are also responsible for doing the security analysis of what they build there. Then you can tell them, please make it conforming to that particular assessment model with that particular terminology and so on. And
kind of like a FMEA defining the different levels.
oh yeah, actually we just been doing a small prototype on looking at the component fault trees and taking exactly these such considerations into account. Just thinking if I have something to show here, but I might not. Yeah, we built a tiny language to just see how would it be if we would integrate with a safety tool, and how would it be if the safety guys and the security guys would learn from each other. So this is now the green stuff is stems from the safety world, where you can talk about safety goals and hazards, and but that's just a research prototype. That's not a product and not intended to be, because we believe in these tools to be specific to particular disciplines. We don't want to, we don't. Safety tools are great and they are working fine.
Yeah, Basti, thank you so much for all the answers, the presentation, and everything. Actually, for me, the information is really good. I understand it is a little bit product specific from you guys, that you guys have developed this product, but I like the idea of using models to do risk assessment. This for me is something that is future, the next step. So I really appreciate the presentation today. Do you have any final comments?
I hope you're all safe. Thank you for being there. It was a pleasure for me to, and an honor to be able to talk to all of you. So many people interested in what I say. What an honor.
Great, Basti. Well, thank you so much. Everyone, please stay safe. And next week, don't forget, we have a COVID approved webinar again for ASRG. So you can find all that information on the YouTube channel or asrg.io. So looking forward to seeing you next week. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Goodbye.